London, 1744. A man of reason, engineer, anatomist, astronomer, lies awake in a rented room above a quiet street. Emanuel Swedenborg has spent the evening dissecting diagrams of the brain, searching for the physical seat of the soul, the point where matter touches consciousness. Near midnight, something changes. Not a sound, not a dream. A shift, a pressure behind the forehead, subtle, deliberate, as if a second pair of eyes is opening from inside the skull. He tries to move. He can't. Not paralysis, something stranger. His awareness tilts, loosening from the body that still lies perfectly still on the mattress. And then it happens. A light. Not in the room, inside the vision. A bright, steady radiance from the center of the head, as he later writes in his diary. A place he once mapped in anatomical sketches. A place modern science now calls the pineal gland. The light grows, warm, focused, intelligent. Swedenborg feels himself pulled upward, not out of the world, but inward, as if attention itself is stepping through a hidden doorway. He will later document the moment with the precision of a scientist and the terror of someone who realizes the boundary between waking and dreaming has simply collapsed. And this is where the real question begins. What opened in his mind that night? Why did a man obsessed with the mechanics of the brain suddenly witness consciousness from the outside? And why do experiences like this, across centuries, cultures, and clinical records, all point back to the same tiny organ deep in the center of the human head? You carry one inside you, a tiny pinecone-shaped gland, smaller than a grain of rice, buried between your brain's hemispheres, isolated in perfect darkness. The ancient Egyptians drew it as the Eye of Horus, a single eye at the center of perception, staring inward. The Sumerians carved winged beings holding pine cones in stone, touching them to the tree of life, as if transferring something invisible. In India, they marked the same spot on the forehead with a red dot. The Ajna chakra, the third eye, the place where ordinary vision ends and something else begins. The Romans built a 4-meter bronze pine cone and placed it at the heart of their empire. When Christianity rose, they kept it. It still stands in the Vatican, the Pineal, a pagan relic of immortality, preserved at the seat of the soul. Every civilization, every era, same symbol, same location, not because they believed in myths, because they were mapping something real. You experience it every night. That moment when you're falling asleep but still aware. When the room begins to dissolve but you haven't fully left. When shapes flicker behind your closed eyelids, geometric patterns, flashes of color, faces you've never seen but somehow recognize. Neuroscientists call this hypnagogia, the threshold state, the crossing, and it's governed by that tiny gland in the center of your brain. The pineal gland produces melatonin. You know this. Everyone knows this. It regulates your sleep cycle, responds to light and darkness through signals from your eyes. But here's what most people don't realize. Melatonin doesn't just make you sleepy. It orchestrates transitions from waking to sleeping, from sleeping to dreaming, from dreaming to something else. When you fall asleep, your brain doesn't just shut down, it shifts. Your brain waves slow from beta, the rapid, alert frequency of waking consciousness, to alpha, then theta, then delta. But the transition isn't instant. For several minutes, sometimes longer, you exist in a liminal space. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your mind, begins to power down. But your sensory cortex, still active. Your default mode network, the part that generates internal narratives, daydreams, self-referential thought, suddenly amplifies. The filters dissolve. And in that gap, People report the same things across cultures and centuries: seeing lights, feeling their body separate, hearing voices, sensing a presence, perceiving geometric patterns that seem to contain meaning. Swedenborg wasn't hallucinating. He was experiencing what happens when consciousness doesn't fully commit to either side, when it lingers in the crossing. And what controls this crossing? The pineal gland, through melatonin, through its response to light, through its unique position as the only unpaired structure in the midline of your brain. But here's where it gets strange. The pineal gland contains photoreceptor cells, the same kind that exist in your retina. In reptiles and amphibians, it actually functions as a literal third eye, a light-sensitive organ on top of the skull. In humans, it's buried deep inside the brain, shielded from external light. And yet it still responds to light. Just not the light you see. It responds to the rhythm of light and darkness encoded in your circadian system. It marks boundaries, day and night, sleep and waking. This state and that state, it's an eye that sees without seeing. A receptor tuned not to the outer world, but to the transitions between worlds. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. He believed it was the place where the immaterial mind touched the material body. He was mocked for this, called unscientific. And in one sense, he was wrong. The pineal gland doesn't work the way he thought. But in another sense, he was onto something. Because what if the question isn't where does consciousness come from, but where does consciousness interface with matter? What if the brain isn't a generator of consciousness, but a receiver, a tuner? And what if the pineal gland is one of the tuning mechanisms? Think about it this way. You have two states, waking and sleeping, conscious and unconscious. But the richness of human experience doesn't happen in those states. It happens between them. In the hypnagogic transition, people have creative insights, solve problems they couldn't solve while awake, experience what feel like communications from something beyond themselves. In deep meditation, when melatonin levels shift and brainwave patterns change, people report dissolving into something larger, losing the boundary between self and not self. In near-death experiences, and we'll come back to this, people describe a light, a tunnel, a sense of elevation, a feeling that they've touched something ultimate. All of these happen at thresholds, at crossings, at moments when the brain's normal filters are suspended, but awareness remains. And all of them correlate with activity in or around the pineal gland. Now here's the twist. Recent research has found something unexpected. The enzymes required to produce DMT, one of the most powerful psychedelic compounds known, are present in the mammalian brain, including in the pineal gland and visual cortex. In rats, extracellular concentrations of DMT in the cerebral cortex were found to be similar to those of canonical neurotransmitters like serotonin. This is controversial. Many neuroscientists argue that the concentrations are too low to produce psychoactive effects, and that the pineal gland's primary function is melatonin production. They're probably right about that. But what if DMT isn't meant to flood your system like a drug? What if it works differently, at specific synapses, in specific moments, amplifying signals during transitions? Researchers observed a significant increase in DMT levels in the rat visual cortex following cardiac arrest, a finding that occurred even without an intact pineal gland. Cardiac arrest, the moment of death, the ultimate transition, which brings us to something even stranger. In 2013, researchers at the University of Michigan did something remarkable. They placed electrodes in the brains of rats and induced cardiac arrest while monitoring neural activity. What they found shouldn't have been possible. Within the first 30 seconds after the heart stopped, there was a massive surge of synchronized gamma oscillations, the fastest brainwave frequency, associated with conscious perception, memory, and attention. This activity wasn't just present. It was more coherent than during normal waking consciousness. The brain regions were communicating with each other more efficiently than they ever had while the rat was alive. The lead researcher, Jimo Borjigan, described it as a state of heightened awareness, a hyper-conscious moment in the dying brain. Now fast forward to 2023, same team. This time, they had permission to monitor 4 comatose human patients who were being removed from life support. 2 of the patients showed the same thing, a surge of gamma activity in the hot zone of consciousness, the junction between the temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes at the back of the brain, the same region associated with dreaming, visual hallucinations, and altered states. This is the region that lights up when people report near-death experiences, when they describe leaving their bodies, seeing a light, feeling a presence, experiencing something they later call more real than real. Now, many scientists are skeptical. They argue that this surge is simply the brain's final response to oxygen deprivation. But consider this. 20% of people who survive cardiac arrest report near-death experiences. They describe them as profoundly coherent, organized, meaningful. Some say they learned things, met deceased relatives, experienced a life review. These aren't random hallucinations. They have structure, and they occur during a moment when the brain is supposedly shutting down, but is actually surging with organized electrical activity. So here's the question. Is the dying brain generating consciousness? Or is it receiving something, one final signal from a field of awareness that exists beyond the physical? The pineal gland doesn't create this moment, but it might be one of the keys that unlocks it. Roger Penrose, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, proposed a theory called orchestrated objective reduction. The theory suggests that consciousness arises not from classical computation in neurons, but from quantum processes occurring in microtubules, protein structures inside neurons. These microtubules, they argue, can sustain quantum coherence long enough for quantum states to collapse in an orchestrated way, giving rise to conscious experience. If true, this means consciousness is not an emergent property of complexity. It's a fundamental feature of the universe, mediated by quantum mechanics. Now, Penrose and Hameroff don't specifically single out the pineal gland, but consider this. The pineal gland contains microtubules just like every other neural structure, but it also contains calcite crystals, tiny mineral deposits that accumulate with age. These are piezoelectric crystals, meaning they respond to mechanical stress by generating an electrical charge. Calcite crystals are also found in the inner ear, where they help us detect gravity and balance. But in the pineal gland, their function is unknown. Some researchers have speculated that these crystals could act as resonators, structures capable of detecting subtle electromagnetic fields, or even amplifying quantum coherence. There's no proof, but there's also no explanation for why a gland buried in darkness would need crystalline structures sensitive to vibration and electromagnetic frequencies, unless it's listening for something. But there's another key, one that ancient traditions always paired with the third eye, even though modern medicine almost forgot about it. The heart. Not as a metaphor. As an organ, your heart has its own nervous system. About 40,000 neurons. They process information independently of your brain. Some researchers call it the heart brain. And here's what's remarkable. In those dying patients who showed the gamma surge, there was also an increase in heart rate, right before the final activity peaked. The heart was responding before the brain fully transitioned. This isn't isolated. Studies in cardiac coherence, when your heart rhythm becomes smooth and organized, show that it changes brain function. The heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. These signals influence perception, emotional processing, decision-making. Your heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, 60 times greater than your brain's electrical activity. This field is detectable several feet outside your body. It synchronizes cells. It creates coherence. But here's what recent research from the HeartMath Institute and other labs has revealed. When your heart enters coherence, when its rhythm becomes ordered, sine wave-like, something profound happens in the brain. Gamma oscillations spike in the prefrontal cortex and temporal lobes, the same fast-frequency brainwaves associated with heightened awareness, with mystical states, with the dying brain's final surge. Brain regions begin communicating more efficiently. The autonomic nervous system balances. Time perception shifts. Minutes stretch into hours or collapse into moments, and people report something stranger. Intuition spikes. They describe just knowing things without reasoning. The boundary between inner and outer becomes permeable. The sense of separation dissolves. This is measurable, repeatable, real. Now consider the anatomy. Your heart's electromagnetic field is 5,000 times more powerful than your brain's. It extends 3 meters beyond your physical body, carrying information in its frequency pattern. The pineal gland sits in the exact center of your brain, surrounded by more blood flow than almost any organ except the kidneys. It's bathed in cerebrospinal fluid, and it contains those calcite crystals, piezoelectric structures that respond to electromagnetic fields. It also contains photoreceptor cells, melanopsin-containing neurons that evolved to detect light, now buried in perpetual darkness. What if these aren't vestigial? What if the pineal gland is tuned to detect the electromagnetic signature of the heart when it reaches coherence? Think about it. When your heart field achieves resonance, when it broadcasts that clear, coherent signal, the pineal gland receives it, not as light from outside, as light from inside the system. The electromagnetic resonance between heart and pineal creates an internal luminosity, a field effect that consciousness interprets as light because that's the only metaphor available. But it's not light, it's coherence. The moment when two organs, heart and brain, lock into perfect resonance, creating a unified field. This is what Swedenborg touched that night in 1744. Not madness, not metaphor, a moment of inner alignment. The heart settling into coherence, the pineal attuning to that resonance. And from that coherence, something stirred, not illumination, but encounter. A presence unfolding from the center of consciousness, carrying the unmistakable weight of something beyond time, beyond reason, more real than anything his outer senses had ever known. The ancient yogis said the heart chakra governs resonance and connection. The third eye governs vision and perception. Together, they form a system, a bridge between the physical and something larger. Sufi mystics spoke of seeing with the heart's eye. Christian mystics described visions emanating from the chest, not the head. In every contemplative tradition, the path inward involves both, focused awareness in the head and open presence in the heart. What if they were describing, in the language available to them, a real physiological system? What if consciousness interfaces with the body through two primary channels? The pineal gland, marking transitions, opening portals between states. The heart, amplifying signals, creating resonance, determining whether you pass through or retreat. One sees, one feels. Together, they tune you to something beyond ordinary perception. In heart-brain coherence, the corridor isn't just open, it's stable. You can walk through it consciously. And what's on the other side? What if the brain doesn't produce consciousness? What if it receives it? This is the transmission theory of consciousness, proposed by philosophers like William James and later explored by neuroscientists like Bernardo Kastrup. The idea is simple. The brain is a filter, not a generator. Consciousness is non-local, existing independently of matter. The brain restricts, focuses, and channels it into the experience of being a localized self. If that's true, then the pineal gland and the heart together form the valve. Two organs, one interface. The pineal gland, the tuning mechanism for brainwave states, neurochemical transitions, temporal perception. The heart, the resonance amplifier, the field generator, the signal that says, safe to proceed. During waking life, the valve is mostly closed. You experience a trickle of consciousness, just enough to navigate, survive, think, act. The heart maintains baseline rhythm. The pineal gland tracks day and night. Both keep you locked into consensus reality. But in sleep, in meditation, in near-death experiences, in moments of ego dissolution, the heart finds coherence. The pineal gland opens the gate. The valve releases. And suddenly, you're not a body with consciousness. You're consciousness having a body. In the end, maybe the mystery was never hidden in the pineal gland, or the heart, or the dying brain. Maybe those were just the instruments. Maybe the signal they respond to is you. Not the you made of memories and habits. Not the personality shaped by time. But the deeper one. The one that notices your thoughts instead of being trapped inside them. The one that appears in the silent pauses between breaths. The one that feels older than your life and somehow untouched by it. Every ancient symbol, every mystical text, every scientific anomaly circles the same idea. Consciousness isn't something you have, it's something you are, and the body, its glands, its fields, its thresholds, is not a prison or an illusion. It's a doorway, a way for the infinite to localize itself, to forget, to wander, to learn, to return. So when the pineal brightens in a dream, or the heart slips into coherence for no reason you can explain, maybe that shimmer of light behind the eyes isn't a hallucination. Maybe it's a reminder, a memory breaking through the filter. A moment when the part of you that lives in matter briefly touches the part that lives in everything. And in that contact, in that recognition, something ancient and familiar whispers. You were never separate. You were never small. You were never only a body. You are the field looking through the human shape you temporarily inhabit. You are the witness behind your thoughts. You are the consciousness that once stepped into matter and can, in rare moments of clarity, remember itself. Maybe that's what opened in Swedenborg. Maybe that's what opens in all of us. Not a door to another world, but a door back to what we already are.